There are several ways of solving quadratic equations. Probably the simplest, though, is by factoring. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about factoring here because I have a couple of videos on that. And if you want to check those, you can see some explanations of factoring there. Here's a quadratic equation. Now, the most important thing, if you're going to solve this, is to have all the terms on one side so that you have a zero on the other side. Because what happens is, once you've got this factored, the whole idea is that if either of these brackets contain a zero or become zero, then the product will be zero. So for example, either x minus 5 is 0 or x plus 3 is 0. And solving that, you get x equals 5 or x equals negative 3. Now, you don't have to write this line. I'm just putting this in by way of explanation. The answer is always the opposite sign to what you see in the brackets. Now, if the factoring is a little more complicated, and again you might want to use decomposition or the crisscross method for doing this, once you get to here and you put either one of these equal to 0, this is just a negative 4 here, which is what I talked about in the first example. In this case, when you bring the 5 over, you have to divide by 2. So if you're using a shortcut, remember it's positive 5, but then you have to divide by 2 to get the answer. Now here's another example. I've started it out. It's kind of a mixture. This is sort of factored on this side and so on. But you have to get rid of this. You have to multiply the negative 2 into that bracket. Get rid of the brackets. I like to have my first term positive, so I would think of moving both of these terms over to the right hand side. Even though I wrote them on the left side, I'm thinking of moving them over there. For some reason or other, I like to have the 0 on this side. Again, once you get that factored, and that's not the easiest thing to do, but once it is factored, once again, using the shortcut, x is equal to positive 2 divided by 3, or negative 4 divided by 5. Now, a couple other examples. If you only have two terms, and both terms have an x, of course you can factor out the 7x. That's how you do the factoring. Then when you put either of these equal to 0, on this side x is 2. Over here, don't worry about the 7. The 7 cannot create a 0. 7 times 0 is 0, so x takes the value 0. If you don't want to do it that way, what you could do is you could take that same example, divide both sides by 7. You can always divide both sides by whatever you want. It's not going to change the fact that that's a 0 over there. Factor out the x. And you get the same answers as we did over here. So whether you keep the 7 or not, you're going to get the answers 0 or 2. Once again, if you've only got two terms, it would look like this, and that's the difference of squares. Once you have it factored, you've got the two answers, negative 5 and positive 5. Another way of handling one question of this type, if you don't like factoring, you could always just move the 25 to the other side. This only happens when there's no x on this, so x squared is 25, and then just take the square root of both sides, and that'll give you x equals plus or minus 5. So whichever example here you're looking at, remember the most important thing is to have a 0 on this side, because 0 is the only number where when you have this factored, if either of these is 0, then that's going to create an answer for you. In the next video, I'll look at how to solve these if you can't factor them, and that would be using the quadratic formula.